Get off this land right now. You don't belong here. That's what she screamed at me, waving a clipboard in my face like it was some kind of badge. And behind her, 3 SUVs rolled up my driveway with flashing amber lights, cutting through the morning mist. And for a second I actually froze, because it looked like some kind of low-budget police raid. Except it was my own porch, my own inherited cabin. And I realized these weren't cops at all, just HOA volunteers playing dress up. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just facing a neighborly dispute. I was about to fight for the very ground under my feet. I had just settled into this cabin 3 weeks after inheriting it from my uncle, mug of coffee in hand, the smell of pine and wet earth filling the air, thinking maybe life was finally slowing down. When suddenly this woman, blonde hair tied tight, blazer buttoned up, voice sharpened like a blade, marched toward me. I'm Melissa Pierce, chairwoman of the Meadow Creek Homeowners Association. We've had reports of unauthorized occupation, and we're here to conduct a compliance inspection. She said it like she was reciting from a cop show. And behind her, a guy in a reflective vest started stringing yellow tape between my trees as if my home was a crime scene. I almost laughed, but the knot in my stomach was real. Unauthorized occupation? This cabin had been in my family for decades. My uncle left it to me. Signed, sealed, deed filed at the county office. But here she was, acting like she could decide whether I was allowed to sit on my own porch. I told her straight. This is my property. I inherited it from my uncle. And you've got no business here. The guy with the tape, his name was Derek. I later learned started fumbling with his fake badge. Clearly nervous when I asked for real credentials. Real cops don't twitch like that. He looked like a kid caught faking a hall pass. Then I noticed something else that made my blood boil. On the property boundary marker, nailed right into my land, was a little metal sign. Chairwoman reserved parking. She had literally claimed a parking space on land that wasn't hers. I pulled out my phone, started recording, and said, "So let me get this straight. You're conducting an inspection without a warrant, with a volunteer who can't provide credentials, and you've planted reserved signs on my property?" Melissa's smile cracked, her voice raised. "This area falls under HOA jurisdiction for community safety." But even as she barked, her authority was slipping. That might have been the end of it, just another bizarre HOA stunt, except 2 hours later, when the moving truck finally arrived with my stuff. The same SUV was parked sideways across my driveway, blocking the path. The driver looked at me like, "Buddy, time is money." And there she was, Melissa, crouching behind the trees, watching like some discount spy. I walked the perimeter, half to find another route, half to test if she was actually stalking me. Every time I moved, she moved. When I went toward the creek, she shifted. When I doubled back, she repositioned. It was like being hunted, except I was on my own land. By the pump house near the back, I found a wooden box with rusty old keys hanging inside. My uncle must have left them. The pump house had a heavy padlock, newer than the building itself. I fiddled with the keys until one clicked open, and when the door creaked wide, the air smelled of damp metal and something else. Secrets. Inside was more than pipes and wiring. Against the wall sat a locked filing cabinet. Another key opened it. And that's when everything changed. Stacks of documents. County letterhead. Lease agreements. My uncle had rented out the pump house and mailbox cluster to the HOA for years, signed by him, countersigned by Melissa. They weren't HOA property at all. They were mine. The HOA had been paying rent, and by inheriting the land, I'd become their landlord. Suddenly, her little theater of authority made sense. She was desperate to cover the truth. But reading those papers stirred something heavy in me. Letters from my uncle. Carefully typed, pushing back against Melissa's demands for more control. He'd been polite, diplomatic, but firm. Your patrols are unauthorized. These expenses are not approved. His last letter, just weeks before he passed, was sharper. Any attempts to exceed agreed terms will result in immediate termination. Sitting in his chair, I felt the weight of his fight pressing down on me. I actually thought about giving up. Was it worth it? Was I really going to spend my days battling an HOA bully, reliving the stress that had eaten at my uncle? Part of me wanted to pack up, walk away, let them have it. But then I saw his handwritten note, tucked deep in the file. If they try to intimidate you, show them the truth. If they claim authority, call the sheriff. These people have forgotten the difference between authority and theater. I sat there with that note crumpled in my hand, heart pounding, and I knew I wasn't backing down. The very next day, I got a call from Rebecca Shaw, one of the treasurers. She sounded nervous, but firm. I've been tracking HOA expenses, and things don't add up. Thousands spent on compliance patrol equipment that was never approved. Fees for facility management that seem inflated. Do you know anything about facilities on your land? I told her what I'd found. Suddenly, I wasn't alone. That evening, the community held a gathering at the mailbox cluster. Again, my property. Melissa stood in the middle, Derek behind her like hired muscle. I walked straight up, sat down on the bench my uncle had built, and said, "Don't stop on my account. I'd love to hear what you all think about community concerns, especially when they involve my land." The word "my" landed like a bomb. Faces shifted. Melissa's jaw tightened. Rebecca piped up, waving spreadsheets. "Melissa, can you explain these charges? $2,500 for patrol equipment? That wasn't in the budget we approved." Derek looked down at his shoes. Neighbors started murmuring. "Wait, what patrol services? We've been paying for that?" The walls were closing in. I didn't even have to push. The following afternoon, I staged it, clipboard in hand, measuring tape stretched by the pump house, visible from the road. It didn't take long. Derek's SUV rolled up, Melissa right behind, another volunteer unloading radio gear like they were setting up a command post. And then, right on time, a real county sheriff's vehicle pulled in. Deputy Mark Lewis. Uniform, badge, everything official. Everything. Derek strutted over, badge out, voice booming. "Sir, you need to stop and submit to a compliance review. This is HOA jurisdiction. I need identification for work on community grounds." Before I could answer, Deputy Lewis stepped forward. "I'm Deputy Lewis, County Sheriff's Office. Can I see your credentials for conducting property inspections?" Derek froze, stammered. "I'm a certified compliance volunteer with Meadow Creek HOA." He held up his badge, plastic, flimsy, pathetic next to the deputy's real thing. "What agency issued this? Who authorized you to detain or inspect?" the deputy asked. Derek's face drained. Melissa tried to jump in. "There's been a misunderstanding. Deputy, he's just a volunteer helping with oversight." But it was too late. The performance had collapsed under real authority. Rebecca opened her folder right there. "Deputy, we've got records of over $4,000 spent on unauthorized patrol gear, charges for programs that don't exist, and payments for facilities they don't even own." Grant, another neighbor, stepped forward with his recorder. "I've picked up radio chatter, discussions about surveillance, enforcement protocols. It's all here." Deputy Lewis wrote it down, shook his head, and said to Derek, "Impersonating law enforcement is a serious crime. Presenting yourself with authority to inspect private property without certification violates state law." Derek looked like he was about to cry. Melissa stared at me, eyes wide, realizing her empire was crumbling. 2 days later, Rebecca posted the financial breakdown at the local feed store, where gossip traveled faster than wildfire. Color, coded spreadsheets showing sick $300 in unauthorized spending, sham patrols, fake certifications. Residents stood there, reading it, shaking their heads in disbelief. Melissa drove up, sat in her SUV for nearly 10 minutes, finally stepped out, and muttered to no one, "This is private business." But her voice was weak, cracked. Everyone knew the game was over. I served official notice, 3 days to remove all equipment, provide missing receipts, and explain the fraudulent patrol program or face legal action. I attached the deputy's report, photos of Derek's fake badge, Rebecca's financials. That night, Melissa actually called me. Her voice was shaky, desperate. "We need to resolve this quietly. The HOA is in financial trouble. I never meant for it to go this far. Derek got carried away." She rambled excuses, confessed deficits, admitted she'd tried to cover losses by inventing enforcement programs. I listened, but inside I felt cold. My uncle had warned me. Authority becomes theater when fear drives it. The final day came, clear skies, half the neighborhood gathered by the mailboxes. Waiting, Deputy Lewis, Rebecca, Grant with his recorder, all present. I held up the evidence, the lease agreements, the audio. These patrols were never legitimate. The pump house, the mailboxes, they're on my land. For 4 years you've been paying for a scheme built on lies. Murmurs swelled into angry shouts. People turned on Melissa, voices sharp. "You lied to us! You stole our money!" She stepped out of her SUV, not the commanding chairwoman anymore, but a small, beaten figure. "I can explain," she whispered, but nobody cared. I walked to the property marker, yanked off her chairwoman reserved sign, and underneath, the original metal plate gleamed, "Visitor Parking." My uncle's final joke, preserved all these years. Melissa staggered back like I'd struck her. Even the sign she'd claimed wasn't hers. "The notice period has expired," I said. "Effective immediately. All HOA equipment and personnel are terminated from this property. You have 24 hours to remove everything." Rebecca raised her voice, calling for an emergency board meeting to remove Melissa from office and demand restitution. Neighbors rallied behind her. Deputy Lewis confirmed, calm and firm. "This compliance program is disbanded. Any further impersonation will be prosecuted." The crowd slowly dispersed, whispers of betrayal and restitution hanging heavy in the air. Derek stared at his fake badge like it might vanish. Melissa froze, eyes hollow, before finally retreating to her SUV. Doors slamming, engine roaring. But she didn't leave with authority. She fled with nothing. I walked back to the cabin, sat in my uncle's chair overlooking the meadow. The pump house stood quiet in the distance, no longer a fortress of secrets, just a building on my land. For the first time since inheriting this place, the weight lifted. Last week, they tried to run me off with fake authority. This week, I proved that real law beats theater every time. And if there's a lesson here, it's this. Bullies only win when you let them play the part. Something I'll never forget. And a story worth sharing on HOA Drama Unfolded.